And then this one is basically we have two columns here as well. So we ended up filtering out everything but the all polls and all population. And then we just kept start date and answers. So first thing we want to do is make start date actually be a date. So let's go ahead and I haven't been doing this consistently, but let's go ahead and fix column types for poll data. And actually, let me switch that to Markdown and add a row after that. So poll data sub start date. If you execute that, you see that the type here is object, which is basically string. But what I want to convert it to is a date time. So as type. Now there's toDateTime. So there's a toDateTime function that you can call. But it's actually in pd.toDateTime. And then you pass in the column you want to apply it to, like so. So this has converted all of the strings into datetime 64 type. So that works fine, but I generally just use as type for everything because it's really convenient and seems to work for most things. So I can just basically do as type, and then I have to remember it's datetime 64 is the name of the type. And that returns the same thing. So why learn three things if you can use one? I don't know. So anyways, I'm going to say poll data sub start date is, and I misspelled that, so let me go ahead and fix it. Start date is that. And then let's look at poll date. Poll data. Oh, actually I had that in filtered, so I just overwrote the start date here, but what I wanted to do was actually in selected. So let's do this whole thing with selected instead. And then I'm getting an error here because I don't have start date and selected anymore. So let me go ahead and jump back up here. And then try this again. And then once again, it's complaining because I'm trying to change the copy, which is going to affect the underlying data. So let's actually go ahead and do the underlying data, which is poll data, like that, and then look at selected. So selected sub start date, and we see this is now datetime 64. So I didn't actually change selected, but I changed the underlying data, and so that affected selected as well. The alternative would have been change the poll data and then re-grab off the rows that I wanted and the columns that I wanted. But I didn't need to do that because selected is basically just a shallow copy of stuff from poll data. Okay, so poll data is fine. And then this next bit, I'm actually going to go ahead and pull out %, and I'm going to use apply for that again. So, so first I'm going to go ahead and write a function. So let's write a function that sets get approval %. And you'll notice these are strings here. So I want to convert them to integers. But it's going to take an answer, because this is in the answers column. And then what it's actually getting here is, well, let's go ahead and print one of them. So let's just do that for now. And I'm going to do selected sub 0. And that's actually, let's do selected answers. And so what you have basically is a list of objects. So let's do selected sub answers sub 0. So here's the first row, and I have two objects in a list. And then the first object has choice approve and a %, and the second object has choice disapprove and a %. So to get the approval %, I want to say if answer sub 0 dot choice is equal approve, then I want to return answer sub 0 dot %. And then I want to convert that actually to, let's convert it to a float, even though they all look like whole numbers, because I'm going to average them and stuff. So anyways, answer sub 0 dot %. Otherwise, let's go ahead and return float answer sub 1 dot %. And really, I could actually do another if statement and then throw an error if it didn't match disapprove, but I actually have looked at this data before and I know that it's always going to have two of them, and one's always going to be approved and the other's always going to be disapproved. So I don't really need to do additional checking there. So that's the approval %. And then let me also do one for disapproval. And then this time, if choice 0 is disapprove, I'm going to return the % for answer 0. Otherwise, I'm going to do the % for answer sub 1. And that should be all I need. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add two new columns to my selected data. One is going to apply get approval %, and the other is going to apply get disapproval %. So selected sub approve is going to be equal to poll data. Actually, let's do this on the poll data. So poll data approve equals poll data sub answers dot apply, and then get approval %. And then I'm going to do the same thing with disapprove. And that's going to be answers get disapproval %. And then that affected the poll data. So what I really want to do is basically not do this here. And actually, I want to do all of this stuff after I've added that column. So I'm actually going to move all of this stuff up before I pull the data out. So let me go ahead and before this cell, I think I can add a cell above here. Or actually, let me do it the easy way. So I'm just going to add a cell after this. And then I'm going to put that in there. So So this is going to fix the date, time, and then it's also going to add approve and disapprove to poll data. And then when I filter this, I'm going to select all polls and population A. And then for filtered, instead of answers here, I'm going to have my approve column and my disapprove column. And that should be everything I need. So let's go ahead and look at what I end up with. Oh, and I have to execute this first. All right, so I have an error. Dict object has no attribute choice. So let's actually look at what the choice. I think I have to actually do this. And not answer sub-zero. So that was the problem here. So answer sub-zero, I probably could just use dot choice here. I think this is correct. So let me just go ahead and do that. I could do it either way, but I want to try this. Actually, no. Answer sub-zero is supposed to be an object. So I think it was answer sub-zero, square bracket choice. And then let's try the same thing here. Oops. Okay, let me actually look at the value I have here. Dict object has no attribute percent. So I got past the choice that time. I have to do the same thing here with percent. So let me just do that here. Okay, so that worked. And then let's look at the poll data. So if I scroll down, scroll over, yeah, so now I have an approved column that has a float and a disapproved column that has a float. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and grab those two columns. So approve, not, oh, I misspelled approve. Okay. And so this is the actual data that I'm going to use to create my scatter plot. So I'm actually done with this data set now. Unless I want to rename this column to be a little more descriptive, I'm okay right now. And then I don't actually need this column anymore, so let's go ahead and cut the label and cut that. Okay, and then these last two are just data frame in the constructor. And these are clean already, so I don't need to do anything there. And so that is all of the missing and invalid values, and also fixing the type of all of my columns.